for joining me on the journey. This is Completed Christianity. So, welcome back once again for the next episode of Being Complete. And today is Shabbat. And today we continue on with our Galatians commentary and move in today to Galatians 3. So, the book of Galatians, again, as we've discussed, it's not Paul talking against the law. It's Paul talking about against keeping the law for salvation apart from belief or faith in the atoning work of the Messiah. And so this is where everybody gets off track and off base and into doctrines and traditions of men and thinking that Paul is speaking against the law. This is the error of our modern ways, the error of our Western ways, the error of not knowing the culture, not knowing the history. And so let's move along and take a look today at our passage. So in Galatians 3, O senseless Galatians, O foolish Galatians, who has put you under a spell not to obey the truth, before whose eyes Yeshua Messiah was clearly portrayed among you as impaled or crucified. So a lot of people immediately bring up this verse a lot of times, and people that don't have a lot of depth actually bring up this verse and say, oh, we'll see, the Galatians, they're going back to keeping that law, and Paul just tells them that they're foolish and that they've been bewitched. They've been put under a spell. This isn't the case. They never kept the law in the first place. They were pagans in a pagan land, just like with Colossians. Pagans in a pagan land. They're not keeping the law in the first place. This is not even on their radar. And what they were doing was they were turning back their old ways, their pagan ways, their pagan days, and they were doing this because the circumcision party had come in and said, oh yeah, that faith stuff and all that stuff, you don't got to do all that stuff. All you got to do is be circumcised, and you're good, nothing else matters. So they thought, oh, well, if nothing else matters, we can get circumcised, and then we can still keep our pagan days and pagan ways. Verse 2, this only I wish to learn from you. Did you receive the Spirit by works of Torah or by the hearing of belief or the hearing of faith? Are you so senseless, so foolish? Have you begun in the Spirit and now end in the flesh? So they received the Spirit, and they received the Spirit without circumcision. They received the Spirit by faith. They received the renewing of their soul. They were born again by faith in the atoning work of Messiah. And then from that point, now you have the onus to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. You are saved at that point, but you got to walk it out to the end, as it says in Hebrews 3. You got to walk it out to the end to actually obtain that salvation at the judgment. You're made right, you're justified by belief to start with, but then you continue on in walking out the works of the law in righteousness. You're not saved by your own righteousness, you're saved by His righteousness, because whatever we do on our own, as Isaiah says, filthy rags. But when we come to ourselves, it's nothing. When we come to Him, it's everything. So are you so senseless, having begun in the Spirit, do you now end in the flesh? That this circumcision is your salvation? No, this circumcision is not your salvation. It can't save you. It's only the Messiah and His blood that can regenerate you to where you can live as He lived. Have you suffered so much in vain If indeed in vain, is he then who is supplying the Spirit to you and working miracles among you? Is he doing it by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith, hearing of belief? So the Spirit being supplied and the working of miracles done by faith. The works of the law is completely different. The works of the law is your purity. Your faith is through that purity is your power to believe for the works of the Mighty One to be done in your life. Even so, Abraham did believe the Mighty One, and it was reckoned unto him as righteousness. So his belief, his faith that Yah would perform everything that he said that he would perform, that he would keep his promises, that belief, that faith that Abraham did, and it says in Genesis 26:5 that Abraham believed, so he kept all the Father's ways and laws and statutes and decrees. So this Abraham did because of faith. This we do because of faith. We do it just like Abraham did. Abraham believed that the Father was able and that the Father would keep his promises, so Abraham did everything he said. But the enemy is brought in a break in that chain. And that break in that chain says that, yeah, he's able, yeah, he'll perform his promises, but yeah, we don't have to keep our end of the deal. We don't have to believe, but we say we believe, but then we don't do. It's like the analogy with the chair. You got a chair rated for a 5-year-old, and you as an adult, you're not going to, if you believe that that's a chair, you're not going to sit down because you know that you don't believe it's going to hold you. And so it's a break in the chain. Know then that those who are of belief are sons of Abraham. And the scripture, having foreseen that the Mighty One would declare right the nations by belief, announced the good news to Abraham beforehand, saying, all the nations shall be favored in you. So that those who are of belief, those who are of faith, are favored with Abraham the believer. So here, the scripture, having foreseen that the Mighty One would declare right the nations by belief, okay, he would declare right by belief. And so this is where he's telling the Galatians, you've missed it. It's not, you don't have it by this circumcision. Now, he's not saying circumcision is a bad thing, but they were taking part in an unscriptural circumcision. They were getting circumcised in the first century Judaism and believing that saves them alone. And that's not the point of the scriptural circumcision. So all nations shall be favored in you. So this is told to Abraham, and so by his belief that we have that favor, by his belief, we have the ability to believe as he did and be favored as he did. For as many as are of the works of the Torah are under the curse. Well, there it is. That's what we get taught. That Torah, it's a curse. So you don't do that. You don't keep that law because you're going to be cursed. Well, this is not the intent. For as many as are of the works of the Torah are under the curse. So he's saying that by just having this circumcision, just keeping these rules, you're going to stay under the curse that comes by breaking those rules, and you've all broken those rules in your life before you even knew about them. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. You've all broken them. You've all contributed to this fallen state. So if you continue just in those works, you're going to stay under the curse that those works pronounce, the penalties of the law. For it has been written, cursed is everyone who does not continue in all that has been written in the book of the Torah, the book of the law, to do them. So once again, everybody says, yep, right there. If you keep the law, you're going to be cursed. No, that's not what it says in the scripture. The scripture in Deuteronomy 28-ish in there, talk about the blessings and the cursings. It says that if you keep them, you'll have favor. If you break them, it'll bring a curse. So you're either a law keeper or you're a law breaker. And so cursed is everyone who does not continue in all that has been written in the book of the Torah to do them. So yes, regardless of whether you believe in keeping the law or know about it, even if you break these things, you're still guilty of all. People want to say, oh yeah, well, if you break one law, you're guilty of all of them, so you don't keep any of them. Well, then you broke all of them. So if you broke all of them, you're just as guilty as if you just, it's just nonsense. It's a complete filter and veil over the eyes where people just can't see the logic, that it doesn't make sense when you say, oh, well, you don't want to be cursed by that law, so break all of it. No, that's not what Paul is trying to say here. And no one is declared right by Torah, by the law, before the mighty one is clear. For the righteous shall live by belief, by faith. So yes, no one is declared right by the Torah. You got to be declared right through the Messiah, and then you walk out your salvation in fear and trembling by keeping the works of the Torah, the works of the law. So that is the way that Paul is giving it here. It's not that you can break these things and it's fine, but if you don't believe in them, it doesn't matter. It's like saying you're going to go down the street and the speed limit's 30 miles an hour. Well, I don't believe in that speed limit, so I'm going to go 60. Well, see how long that lasts. And the Torah is not of belief, but the man who does them shall live by them. So again, this is always said, hey, see, if you do those things, then you're going to live by them. Well, that's not what that's a complete flip. That's what the enemy does. He flips things on its ear, turns it 180 degrees, makes it backwards. The scripture tells us to keep the ways of the Father. All through the Old Testament, it's keep my commandments, keep my commandments, keep my commandments. Well, now it doesn't matter all of a sudden. No, he never changes. It does matter. Paul says that if it was not for the law, he would not have known sin. John says that sin is transgression of the law. And in the context, the only law that you can put that to be is the law of Moses, the law of the Father. That's the law they're talking about. There's no other law. This law of Christ doctrine, I've dealt with that in other things before. The law of Christ, as it is said, that is the same as the law of Moses. It's the law that he kept. It's not a different law. It's two ways to say the same thing. It's a reiteration. It's the law of Moses or law of Messiah. It's all the same thing. And the Torah is not of belief, but the man who does them shall live by them. Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, having become a curse for us. For it has been written, cursed is everyone who hangs upon a tree. So right here, he redeems us from the curse of the Torah. The curse of the law is the punishments. He's redeemed us from the punishments of the law, not from having to keep the law. It's just like when you get a speeding ticket. Now you're under the law. You're under that law of speeding. You have to comply by the statutes of that law. Now that you've broken the law, you've been given a citation, you have to comply with that. Now you have to go in, you have to present yourself, you have to pay the fine, or present your case. And so in the end of that, when that's all done and the fine's been paid or the case has been dismissed, now you're free from the law. You're free from that law that bound you to have to go and appear before the judge, before the clerk, and pay that penalty. Well, Messiah, he redeemed us. He paid that penalty for us. And so when he paid that penalty for us, now we're free from the law. But we're not free to go out and keep breaking it. We're free from the punishment not to be disobedient. We're free so that we can go forward and walk out that freedom, that salvation, that deliverance, that redemption, that we can go on and we can walk out that salvation with fear and trembling for the rest of our life, and that in the end that we show ourselves approved and that we keep our confidence steadfast to the end, as it says in Hebrews 3. We continue on and continue on. So Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the Torah. Having become a curse for us, he became that curse. The Torah requires all of our deaths. He died for us in our place. That death was placed on him. When we come into him and we're in him, we're baptized in him, and we do the things that he does, that he did, the way he lived, to walk like he walked, as John says, that you ought to walk like he walked. He was a Torah observant, Sabbath keeping, kosher eating, tassel wearing Hebrew, and that is Paul's intent for us to be like him, for us to imitate him as he imitated the Messiah. Paul was Torah observant. James says so. Is James a liar? Paul defends himself 3 times in the book of Acts. He's defending himself 3 times against accusations of teaching contrary to the law, but 2,000 years later he still gets accused. And he is the one who has shown us that we don't have to be bound up in doctrines and traditions of men, and that we can come to Messiah and be redeemed. Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, having become a curse for us, for it has been written, cursed is everyone who hangs upon a tree. He hung upon that tree and became a curse for us. Psalm 89:34, my covenant I will not break nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Comments of opposition are welcome. Just don't say anything dumb like we're not under the law. We're under grace, because you've been taught to use that verse outside of the bounds of its intended context. Subscribe now. Smash that subscribe button and ring that bell so that you get notifications of all future videos.